Welcome one, welcome all to Fractal Radio, the official vlog, podcast type deal of the Fractal Journal. You can find the Fractal Journal at www.fractaljournal.com, where you'll find stories, ideas, and more that are going to be increasingly uploaded. In fact, I'm going to try to upload stuff on a daily basis. In fact, I'm going to try to move on to this web type of publication enterprise full-time in measured steps, or perhaps more quickly than that. Time will tell. Now, today's episode is called Gnusmas, and it's something I noticed because I was playing with my phone charger. And I have a Samsung phone. And I noticed that Samsung backwards is Gnusmas. Pardon me. So, if you know anything about Linux, the Linux world, you know that Linux is just the kernel, and then there's a system that runs alongside it called GNU, which is a Unix-like system. GNU stands for GNU is not Unix. It's a super nerdy, recursive sort of acronym there. Now, I just thought it was cute because Christmas is coming up, and that discovery is sort of like an early present for myself. Because Samsung is a corporation, obviously, and likely, from some rumors that I've heard, as some of the problems ethically that corporations have. So to see Gnusmas as its opposite is really, really great, because GNU and the whole open source FOSS type of deal is philosophically generally anti-corporate. Not that there's anything inherently bad about corporations, but they do have tendencies that need to be balanced out. Richard Stallman, the guy behind GNU, is a quite a character, super hippie sort of guy that we can never live up to his standards, but that's the point of a prophet, isn't it? Somebody whose holiness you can only begin to approach, if that. What is all this babble about? Well, what is this show about? It's a show about ideas. I'm not really necessarily here to thrall you with my technical savvy or my in-depth knowledge. I'll gain knowledge and technical savvy as I go along, but primarily the Fractal Journal and Fractal Vlogs, etc., is integrative analysis, which means I just look at everything, I analyze it in a methodical, and I'm hoping creative, without being too woo way, and just presenting it to you. Currently, I'm working on several projects here. I'm writing the sketch of Sam Monroe, which is a sort of thriller. It's not for kids. It's got a lot of adult themes, but it is also kind of comic book-esque. And it just, I love adventure stories. I love jungles. And with the disappearance of frontiers, one of the last frontiers is the psychedelic frontier. So that's explored in there. And I'm not really a big proponent of psychedelics or drug culture, but I don't really necessarily see it as a negative thing if it's engaged in properly. So yeah, give that a read if that sounds like it's up your alley. Also, I'm going to be getting more heavily back into the project that I'm supposed to be working on that I've taken kind of a year or so hiatus from, which is the water project. It's a very interesting question of how the world, with the way that we use resources and with our current population, is going to get along water-wise. Who's going to have what water quality? How does privatization affect all of that? And this is a very fractal subject because it has all of these different kind of faucets that all play into one another. So, going to be doing daily poems, going to try to increase the output of music, going to try to get some other people on board, and actually take this vlog and turn it into more of a podcast. So, and all of that in the spirit of Gnusmas and openness and general fun. The reason that I call the kind of like umbrella thing that I do Mellow Mission Productions is because as I've aged, obviously I've mellowed out a bit, as everybody else does, but because I've always been whittling away at things, and I'm not saying like this makes me special or whatever, but I feel that I've been more of a tinkerer with ideas than a lot of people that I know. I got really wild with some stuff, but what I found is that it's just the long haul kind of whittling away at things that yields the best results. And as I've been able to calm down, I've realized that there's no need to hurry and just make this big finished product or these series of big finished products. No, the best philosophy for life is to just continuously create and cultivate the garden of experience, as it were, if that's not too hippity-dippity for some of you out there. So yeah, man. Right. So I have my little notepad here, and let's see, what was I going to talk about? Normies don't know Russia. Ideological oversimplification goes deeper than Republican and Democrat. Doom. Pithy is gay. Silicon Valley ? Vanity Fair, the magazine that smells like a desperate teenager. So these are all just kind of goofy little ideas. Now, originally, when I was 8 years old, I was still in Russia. I came to the United States in 1998. And yeah, so I have some experience from Russia. I understand a little bit of a different perspective than most people in the English-speaking world, which with the news of Trump kind of going back on that old treaty that has to do with armament, etc., that's kind of troubling to me. Okay, so what the Normies don't know Russia thing was about there is basically this. So Russia apparently was doing some shenanigans and going around certain stipulations of the agreement, which is why Trump withdrew from it. So it's not like a terribly irrational move on his part. However, why did Russia feel the need to do that? Well, because there's all these countries that surround Russia that are closely tied historically, geographically, and ethnically to Russia that have been kind of stirred up, and there's been a lot of weirdness going on. So you've got to understand the geography of the region. And I just hear so much stuff in the mainstream media about this. It's ridiculous, and there's not enough talk about this in the alternative media. And you see, the reason I, generally shy away from these kinds of subjects is because people inherently there's a conflict of interest, even though there's no possible way. Because I came here when I was 8, I was raised by an American, have had basically no contact with Russia, have fallen out of contact with my mother for various rather sad family reasons that I don't want to get into. And I'm super pro-Constitution. I grew up in the South. So to me, I don't want, because I'm trying to present something about Russia, oh my God, he's a Russian Asian. That's always in the back of my mind because people oversimplify things. Even if it's not to that degree, there's this association. And I feel that this whole thing it comes from both the right and the left-wing perspective, because the super nationalists in the Ukraine, obviously people are going to look askance at Russia And oh well, it's kind of like a communist thing that we have to watch out for, even though Russia hasn't been communist and was not communist for most of its history. If you look at how long of a history Russia has had and its outlook and its philosophy. So it's like, it's just a big cluster fucked mess. And I feel that that's all the commenting I'm going to do on it. I might get drawn into some kind of nonsense, but really there's so many more things to talk about. I just wanted to say that we should all focus on understanding geographical situations if we're going to shy away from George Washington's kind of cautioning that it's best to stay out of foreign entanglements. If we're going to kind of, inevitably start globalizing and making decisions on these scales, well, then it behooves us to not stir things up beyond reason. And you can, take umbrage with me on, well, what if Russia was doing something bad? Maybe it wasn't some of those instances, but does that warrant the reaction that we've had? And that's a deeper question. I just wanted to put it forward that I really, as somebody who understands the region, the coverage that I see of it is just completely insane. Now, ideological oversimplification goes deeper than Republican Democrat, and I just touched on that a little bit. That's, people start associating Russia with communism and then this resurgence of Americana spirit, and even people that aren't normally like so bifurcated and thinking along those lines have that humming along in the back of their head. So they make choices in conversation in the way they present information that they normally wouldn't, because it's just this pernicious thing. And I know that was super vague and people are probably going, what the hell is he talking about? But what I'm saying is, it's basically become a meme, like the right-left divide, and it's all used to divide and conquer. Yeah, but it gets into the alt media territory, kind of alternative viewpoints as well. So really, I think it's a really deeply ingrained part of human nature that we have to be even more careful about than just saying, hey, the normies are retards. We do it too. Us hippity-dippity alternative folks of whatever stripe. Doom. Well, doom is what will happen if we don't friggin' calm down and learn to assess situations and see things fractally as this complex unfolding of interconnected events that is really almost touchy. Now, pithy is gay, and I'm not necessarily like against a pithy phrase here and there, but I feel that it's overused to drive points home. It's the inherent, like, age-old problem with a rhetoric over a deeper discourse. It should be used sparingly, not as the brunt of conversation and not as just a way of making points. Because basically what we have is a bunch of exchange of these, like, pithy ideas and sound bites. And yes, this itself is an old and trite thing to say, but it bears repeating because pithy is gay. And, getting hung up on, oh, well, why would you use the word gay? That's offensive to homosexuals. Okay. It's a colloquialism. I don't mean any offense to anybody. And really, it's a silly hang up. I recently just, like, typed in "this is gay" into YouTube search just because I was bored, and it came up like faggot. So a bunch of gay men talking about how much that word hurts. And one of the guys said, well, it just shows a lack of culture. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. It shows the fact that a person uses slang. You can use slang and still have culture. Stop it. Now, Silicon Valley question mark. Okay, this is a whole like idea bubble that I have going on. So Silicon Valley, it sounds very mysterious, very sexy. That's the valley out in the American Southwest where all of that mineral was mined that provided us with all this awesome technology and drew all these innovative companies in and around that area. But how often do the companies around there work with silicon now? And I know that's a moot point, but really, the whole thing, the whole like worship of these tech companies and techies in general, the sexy, trendy techie people out there in their hoodies, yeah, these folks, sure, they're great, a lot of them, but most of it is just them standing on the shoulders of giants, and that's fine. It's just that the general public seems to have this weird perception that they're these magicians, and that's actually often an IT trope, like, dude, these people expect me to be a friggin' wizard. Like, somebody once got it into their head that I'm a computer guy, because I am a computer enthusiast, but anyway, they asked me to repair some stuff, and I did. Not like supremely well, but well enough. And then they came over to my house, and they're like, "Oh, I see that your power supply is broken." I'm like, "Yes, it is." Like, "Well, I thought you were a computer guy." I'm like, "Right, but I don't have soldering tools, and even if I did, messing with that proprietary bit of hardware, it's not something I would do because I'm more on the software side of things to begin with. And second of all, even if I weren't, I wouldn't necessarily have the tools or expertise to work on every bit of hardware. So there's just this weird clumping, and I think it comes primarily from boomers, but I still think it reaches into the millennial generations and even younger, because people just don't really seem to understand what an iterative and collaborative process that this is. Yes, there are lone geniuses who take great strides forward, but generally those lone geniuses just aggregate ideas. Right place, right time, doesn't take any credit away from them. You know, like, you don't have to pull absolutely everything out of your ass to still be an amazing innovator. You just, I don't know. It bothers me. That's why I said Silicon Valley ? Come on, stop with the mysticism. And is it really a valley, or is it just a bunch of different fucking little hipsters? Anyway, Vanity Fair, the magazine that smells like a desperate teenager. So here we go. Vanity Fair often has these little, I guess it's kind of geared towards women, partially, because there's like perfume or cologne or something in there that you can smell, you know, those little strips. So every time I open it, I just remember those days when dudes would friggin' hose themselves down with Axe in an attempt, I guess, to make themselves sexier to women. And it just reminds me of that smell. Also, there's all these hilarious poses in there of just people looking like models, trying to strike various lifestyle representations. Yes, there is good content and good stories, but I just thought it was a funny thing to comment on, that friggin' Vanity Fair, one of these hoity-toity magazines, just reminds me of the smell of a desperate teenager. And on that weird note, this is, of course, one of the quirkiest journals you'll find. I'm going to sign off. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll probably hit you up again, hell, maybe later this evening or whenever, but these things are going to be coming hard and fast. Whoa, that was a little too erotic. Anyway, before I get any weirder, I'm going to go. Goodbye.